Hi everyone, Scott Davenport here, and in this ON1 short clip, I'm going to take a look at the split tone filter. I think this is one of the underrated, overlooked filters that's in ON1 effects, and you can really change the mood and the feel of your photo with just this one filter alone. So I have this photo here taken in Santa Cruz, and I'm going to add the split tone filter in effects. And before I start diving into manipulating sliders and so forth, let's quickly break down what is this filter doing. Well, split toning, as its name suggests, adds a color tone to your photo. Now, different than a photo filter, where in the split tone you can control what color gets added to the highlights, what color gets added to the shadows, and how much of that color do you want? What is your midpoint? Where do shadow colors end and highlight colors begin? So in the filter panel, you've got the highlight section. You pick your color and you can pick how strong you want that color to be. Same for the shadows, a color choice and a strength. You can swap the colors if you want to play around with a quick comparison. And then this balance slider is where you can decide how much of the photo to treat as shadow and how much of the photo to treat as highlights. This last option in mode, that changes how the split tone blends with the rest of the photo. I almost always leave that on color. I'll show you a couple of options at the end of this video where I might use lighten or screen if I was looking for a more washed out vintage feel. Now the presets across the top just give you some starting points with some basic color choices. And for this photo, I'm going to start with blue-orange. I want to take this in more of a warmer direction, adding more warmth to the highlights, cooling down the shadows a little bit, and just giving it a little more of a feel that this was closer to sunset than it really was. So I'm going to click on the color swatch for highlights. Now for Macintosh, you'll get a set of different choices on how to manipulate the colors, and for Windows, it'll be something similar. But any way you like, you can select a particular color. I actually have this like pastel orange that I like. I was working on this on a different photo. I'm going to maybe increase it saturation-wise a little bit more, closer to a pure orange, and click OK. Now we can see if I take this amount slider and drag it all the way to the right, you're going to see lots of this orange tint and tone coming into the photo. It's certainly not what I want for this photo, but just to illustrate, that's where you're controlling how much of that color gets applied. For the shadows, I also click on that color swatch, and I've actually got a nicer purplish tone, closer to that twilight. You can already see where the rocks and some of the shadowy areas in the surf are taking on a very different tint. From here, I will play with the amounts. I want this to be a little warmer, so I'm going to increase the strength, the amount of this orange tint that's getting applied to the highlights. And I'm also going to take the balance and shift that more toward the highlights. Now, if I crank this all the way to the right, see the photo gets very orangey color. And if I shift all the way to the left, it's going much more toward the shadows. So I'm going to bias this, maybe 70 to 75% toward the highlights. Increase that strength of that orange tint even more. And then fiddle a little bit with the purple. I'm really watching the preview window and just playing a little bit. And let's back that off a little bit, go back in here a little more for orange. I may actually click on the orange color and just increase the saturation of it. And I can actually do that here, a little easier to see what's going on. Just that little extra touch. That looks pretty cool. All right, so that's a handful of clicks there. Let me show you before and after here. So before the split tone, after the split tone. This is a very different look and feel for this photo with just the one filter. I mentioned mode. I'll show you here if I highlight over, say, lighten, you get a much more washed out look. Same thing with screen. Lighten doesn't look bad. It's a little bit hot in some of the orange areas, so it would warrant a little more playing. But this is where I would turn to those modes there to get a vintage feel to the end result. So that is the split tone filter. Next time you're looking to spice up your processing a little bit, give it a try.